You are sitting somewhere comfortable right now, climate controlled probably, fed almost certainly, safe from predators completely. You are wearing clothes that regulate your temperature, using technology that extends your sensory range, consuming food that was grown and processed and transported by systems you had no part in building. If you need medicine, it exists. If your eyesight is poor, glasses exist. If your heart malfunctions, surgery exists. You are, by any reasonable biological standard, extraordinarily buffered from the environment. And you have assumed, in that quiet background way that assumptions work, that this buffering means something specific about evolution, that it has stopped, that natural selection, which requires differential survival and reproduction based on heritable traits, has been effectively switched off by the comfort and medicine and technology of modern civilization. That humans have, in some meaningful sense, escaped biology, stepped outside the process. That we are the first species in 4 billion years of life on Earth to have opted out of our own evolution. It is a flattering idea. It makes us special. It makes civilization feel like a kind of transcendence. And it is wrong in a way that is not just scientifically incorrect, but almost precisely backwards. Evolution has not stopped in modern humans. The evidence, when you actually look at it, suggests it may be accelerating. And the direction it is moving in is not the direction anyone expected, and some of what it is producing is not what anyone would have chosen. And the full implication of where it leads reaches far enough into the future that it stops feeling like biology and starts feeling like something else entirely. Stay with the discomfort of that. We are going somewhere with it. Let me build the stopped evolution case as strongly as it can be built, because it deserves a fair hearing before it is dismantled. The argument goes like this. Natural selection works by differential reproduction. Individuals with traits better suited to their environment survive longer and leave more offspring, passing those traits on. Over generations, the frequency of advantageous traits increases in the population. The mechanism requires that some individuals die before reproducing, or reproduce less, because of heritable traits that make them less fit for the current environment. In modern technological societies, this mechanism is blunted. Medicine keeps alive individuals who would have died in earlier environments. Glasses allow the severely myopic to function normally. Insulin keeps diabetics alive and reproductive. C-sections allow births that would have been fatal to both mother and child in any previous era. Food abundance means caloric acquisition is no longer a significant selective pressure for most of the global population. The argument is that when you remove differential mortality and differential reproductive success based on heritable biological traits, you remove the engine of selection. The process does not stop technically, but it idles. It coasts. This argument is coherent. It follows from the logic of natural selection correctly applied. It is also incomplete in ways that turn out to matter enormously. If you want to understand how the universe actually works, not just how it looks, but how it works, hit that subscribe button. Let's find things out together. Let me tell you something about what evolutionary geneticists have actually found when they look at the human genome for signatures of recent selection. Not ancient selection, not the selection that gave us bipedalism and large brains and opposable thumbs. Recent selection. Selection operating within the last few thousand years, well within the period of agricultural civilization, well within the period of what we would call modernity. The signatures are everywhere. Here's the analogy I want you to carry. Imagine you are an archaeologist excavating a site, and you expect to find evidence of occupation up to a certain date, after which you believe the site was abandoned. But as you dig through the most recent layers, instead of finding less evidence of activity, you find more. More artifacts, more construction, more modification of the landscape. The site was not abandoned, it was busy. The absence of evidence you expected was simply an absence of looking in the right places. That is what population genetics has found in the human genome. The most recent evolutionary layers are not empty, they are crowded. Lactase persistence is the most famous example and worth understanding precisely because it is so mundane and so radical at the same time. Most mammals lose the ability to digest lactose, the sugar in milk, after weaning. This makes biological sense Milk is for infants. Once weaned, there is no evolutionary pressure to maintain the metabolic machinery for digesting it. Adult milk consumption was, for almost all of mammalian history, simply not a thing. Then humans domesticated cattle, and suddenly there was a novel food source available to adults, a calorie-dense, nutritionally rich resource that most adults could not digest. Individuals who happened to carry a mutation keeping the lactase gene active into adulthood could extract nutrition from this source. In populations that kept cattle, these individuals were better nourished, healthier, more reproductively successful. The mutation spread. In populations with long histories of cattle herding, Northern Europeans, some East African groups, some Middle Eastern populations, the majority of adults are lactase persistent. In populations without this history, the majority are not. This selection event happened within the last 10,000 years, a blink in evolutionary time. It happened after the development of agriculture. It happened by evolutionary standards essentially yesterday. Do you see what happens? The domestication of cattle did not stop selection. It created a brand new selective pressure that did not exist before. Civilization does not end evolution. It changes the environment that evolution is responding to. And changing the environment changes the selection pressures. And changing the selection pressures changes what gets selected. Stay with me, because lactase is just the clearest example. The genome shows signatures of recent selection across hundreds of genes. Genes related to immune function have been under intense recent selection because dense agricultural settlements created novel disease environments that hunter-gatherers never faced. Genes related to brain development and neurotransmitter function show signatures of recent selection, though what exactly was being selected for is a matter of active research. Genes related to metabolism show recent selection, as agricultural diets differed dramatically from the diets our pre-agricultural ancestors ate. Even genes affecting personality traits and social behavior may carry signatures of recent selection, as the social environment of large sedentary civilizations differs radically from the small nomadic bands our species spent most of its history in. This is the part that keeps me up at night. Let's be honest about what this means for the present and the near future, because this is where the evolutionary observation stops being historical and starts being something more uncomfortable. We are not just living in a changed environment that is selecting for existing traits. We are, for the first time in the history of life on Earth, a species actively modifying its own selective environment faster than evolution can respond to it, and simultaneously developing the tools to directly modify the genome itself. Let me state the implication plainly. Natural selection is a blind process. It does not have goals. It does not optimize for happiness or flourishing or anything recognizable as a good outcome. It selects for reproductive success in the current environment, full stop. A trait that dramatically increases reproductive success while causing suffering in the individual carrying it will spread. A trait that produces extraordinary happiness and flourishing but slightly reduces reproductive success will disappear. The process has no values. It has no preferences. It has been running for 4 billion years, and what it has produced ranges from the sublime to the horrifying, without regard for either category. Modern civilization has not removed us from this process. It has changed the environment the process is operating in. And some of what the new environment is selecting for is not what we would choose if we were choosing consciously. Here is a specific example. Reproductive success in modern societies is not uniformly distributed. It correlates with various traits in ways that differ from ancestral environments. Personality traits, cognitive traits, physical traits all show correlations with number of children that differ across different populations and different historical periods. Some of these correlations point in directions we might endorse. Others do not. The process does not ask our endorsement, it simply counts offspring. This is the visceral consequence I want you to feel right now. You are not outside the evolutionary process, you are inside it. Right now, in this generation, natural selection is operating on the human population, selecting for traits that increase reproductive success in the current environment. You do not know which traits those are with precision. The researchers studying this do not know with certainty which traits those are. But selection is not waiting for us to figure it out. It is running, as it has always run, on the raw data of who has children and who does not, and what those children inherit. You are not an observer of evolution, you are a data point in it. Now I want to take this deeper into the place that Feynman would have gone, because there is an implication here that reaches past biology into something that does not have a clean disciplinary home. We are the first species to develop the capacity to read our own genome. We are the first species to begin developing the capacity to edit it. CRISPR and related technologies have moved gene editing from theoretical to practical within the last decade. The elimination of heritable genetic diseases, which once required the brutal mechanism of differential mortality, can now in principle be accomplished in a laboratory in a single generation without waiting for selection. We can in principle do in a day what natural selection would take 1,000 generations to accomplish, if it accomplished it at all. This is not science fiction. The first gene-edited humans have already been born. The ethical frameworks governing what is permissible are being debated right now in real institutions by real people with real disagreement. And here is where Feynman's style of thinking becomes essential, because the right response to this situation is not terror, and it is not uncritical enthusiasm. It is the response of someone who insists on understanding what is actually happening before deciding how to feel about it. What is actually happening is this: evolution has not stopped, it has bifurcated. There is still natural selection operating on the human population, slowly, as it always has. And there is now also something new, call it directed selection or technological evolution or something else for which we do not yet have the right word, operating on a timescale and with a precision that natural selection cannot approach. These two processes are now running simultaneously, and they do not necessarily point in the same direction, and we are not yet wise enough to know what we are pointing the directed process at. The natural process is blind and has no goals. The directed process has goals, but we do not agree on what they are. And even where we agree, our goals are shaped by the same evolutionary history we are trying to transcend, which means we may be optimizing for what our evolved preferences tell us is good rather than what is actually good. And we do not have a view from outside our own evolutionary history to check. We are trying to aim a process we only partially understand, using a compass that was itself shaped by the process we are trying to aim. And yet the alternative, refusing to engage, declaring the technology off limits, trying to hold the line at the current state of human biology, is also a choice with consequences. Natural selection will continue whether we engage with directed selection or not. It will continue selecting for reproductive success in the current environment, without goals, without values, without any consideration of what a good outcome for conscious beings might look like. The question is not whether human evolution continues. It does. The question is whether it continues blindly or whether we develop the wisdom to give it direction. And the question underneath that question is whether we are remotely wise enough to do this well, given that we are not starting from a neutral position, but from a position shaped by 4 billion years of blind process that optimized for survival and reproduction rather than flourishing. Let me bring this to where it deserves to land, because the honest answer to this question is not reassuring, and it is not despairing. It is something rarer, genuinely open. Feynman believed, above almost everything else, in the importance of living with uncertainty, not pretending to certainty you do not have, not reaching for comfortable answers because the uncomfortable ones are hard to hold. The honest position on human evolution in the present moment is that we are in the middle of a transition whose end state we cannot see, using tools we do not fully understand, guided by values that are themselves products of the process we are trying to transcend. This is not a reason for despair. It is a description of what it actually means to be at the frontier of something genuinely new. Every generation of humans has been, in some sense, a transitional form. Every generation has been the bridge between what came before and what came after. But we are the first generation for whom the after might differ not just culturally, but biologically. Not through the slow grind of natural selection, but through deliberate choice. And the weight of that, The responsibility of it, the danger of it, the extraordinary potential of it is something our evolved emotional machinery was not built to feel appropriately. We feel too little of it on most days. We go about our lives inside the process without feeling the process. We are evolution becoming aware of itself and not quite knowing what to do with the awareness. The awareness is not comfortable. It was never going to be comfortable. But it is the most important thing we have. You are not the end of evolution. You are the moment evolution opened its eyes. If this twisted your brain a little bit, good. That means it's working. I'll see you in the next one.